Right. Oh, these papers were originally prepared for a meeting that was not a closed meeting, but was an open meeting. So the papers are a little bit different to the way in which we would normally go. But I'm going to go to the officer to make her report at this stage.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Members are requested to determine an application for the variation of a premises licence in respect of Osterley Park Hotel, 764 Great West Road, Isworth, having regard to the representations received and the requirement for the promotion of the 4 licensing objectives. This application has been submitted by Shetson Property Developments Limited. The applicant is proposing the following: supply of alcohol for consumption on and off the premises, Monday to Thursday and Sunday, 11 to 23:30, Friday and Saturday, 11 till half midnight. Live music, recorded music, performance of dance and anything of a similar description, Monday to Thursday and Sunday, 2300 hours to 23:30. Friday and Saturday, 2300 hours to half midnight. Late night refreshment, Monday to Thursday and Sunday, 2300 hours to 23:30. Friday and Saturday, 2300 hours to half midnight. Hours premises open to the public, Monday to Thursday and Sunday, 11 till midnight. Friday and Saturday, 11 till 1 a.m. Update the plans for the building and the site, including some external areas. The adding of 2 new conditions, as agreed with police and council, detailed on page of the section L. Reduce the terminal hours for licensable activity and when the premises are open to the public. Bullet points 1 to 6 below and only applies to the parts of the premises known as the public house bar area, as shown, blue boundary on the plans attached to this application. The application has been properly made and all procedures correctly followed. The application has been attached as Appendix A. A copy of the current premises licence in full has been attached as Appendix B. The premises are situated in an area of residential properties. The appropriate ward, neighbouring ward councillors and responsible authorities have been consulted. Of those consultees identified in paragraph 6.2, there have been 11 representations, 7 from other persons concerned with noise, public nuisance and antisocial behaviour associated with the premises, 2 from councillors also concerned with noise, public nuisance and antisocial behaviour associated with the premises. 2 from responsible authorities, pollution team informing of complaints they've received and the breach in licensing conditions, the licensing enforcement officer, a breach in conditions and questioning the interior layout of the premises. The representations have been attached as Appendix C, other persons, Appendix C1, councillors, Appendix C2, responsible authorities. Copies of both this report and the representations have been sent to the agent. Thank you, Chair.
Right, thank you, Nicola. Can I, just before we go on, can I call on our legal advisor just to give us some instructions on the term variation to the licence and exactly what we're looking at this evening? Kenise, are you able to do that?
Yes. Councillors, good evening. I'm Kenise Ali. I'm the legal advisor to the panel. I will be advising the panel only. Just for clarity purposes, what I'd like to draw to the panel's attention is that today's application is an application to vary the licensable activity hours. This is not a review application, and it is an application made by the premises license holder, so the applicants. And it is specifically in relation to the licensable activity hours. Do you want me to clarify anything else, Chair?
Yeah, could you just give us some idea of where our responsibilities lie and where they end?
Sure. With regards to the powers are within the Licensing Act 2003, Section 35. In particular, your attention is drawn to Section 35, subsection 3, which gives you the power to hear relevant representations for the purposes of today's hearing. Subsection 3 specifically states that the authority must hold a hearing to consider any relevant representations unless the authority, the applicant, and each person who has made such representation agree that a hearing is unnecessary. And subsection 3b states that having regard to the representations, take such steps mentioned in subsection 4. Now, subsection 4 gives states that the steps are A, to modify the condition of the current license, B, to reject the whole or part of the application, and for the purpose of the conditions of a license are modified if any of them is altered or omitted, or any new condition is added.
So can I just clarify that? Does that mean that the committee has the powers to reduce the hours as put in by the applicant?
The panel will have to hear submissions, and following hearing those submissions or representations, the panel is in a position to decide whether the proposed hours within the application are appropriate, reasonable, and justified. This is an application to reduce the hours, so the panel will consider whether the proposed reduction is appropriate, reasonable, and justified in light of the submissions that you'll hear today. And therefore, if you take the view that in light of what representations are made, you consider it to be appropriate to reduce them, then you do have the power to do that.
Okay.
And Section 35 of the 2003 Act gives you that power.
Right. Thank you very much, Kennis.
Forgive me, is the councillor asking whether they can reduce the hours even further than what we've applied for?
I'm asking if what restraints the term variation puts on our powers, whether to reduce the hours, even to reduce the hours lower, or to in fact increase the hours. Although that's not, an increase is not on there, but I'm just asking what our powers are in that, and yes, I mean whether our powers include being able to reduce the hours as those presented by the applicant.
Well, I'll come on to that in my submissions, but I do think you need advice from your legal advisor on that.
Well, that's what I just asked for, and I think I received. Right. Okay. So can we move on then? So, Chair, anyway, can I go back? Sorry, I've missed out a point here. The officer presenting the details, do you agree with the circumstances as presented by the officer? That's to the applicant.
Do I agree with the circumstances that have been presented?
By the officer, yes.
To an extent, yes. It's perhaps not how I would have phrased things, but I'll come on to that in my presentation.
Okay, fine.
Sorry, Mr. Alford, I think, Chair, it's Kenny's here. Mr. Alford, what Councillor Foote is asking is the summary that the licensing officer has presented, not in terms of the conversation that took place thereafter. So it's rather what Ms. Nicola Harbour has summarised to the panel, and he's seeking confirmation from you with regards to whether you agree to what Ms. Harbour has put.
So the difficulty I have with it is it was said that we're proposing certain hours. We're not proposing certain hours. We've already got them. We are proposing a cutback in hours in a certain area of the premises, and it's much better to focus on what the cutback is than to think of it as if we're proposing new hours for everything, which we're not.
I think you can clarify that point when you have the opportunity to address the panel anyway. But for the purpose of what Councillor Foote, the chair, is asking is, do you agree with the summary provided by Ms. Harbour, the
Yes.
presenting officer?
I take that as a yes. Mr.
Yes, no, that's fine. I'll deal with it in submissions. That's not a problem.
Okay. Right, we're now going to the applicant. So if we call upon the applicant to confirm the name and address the panel about the application.
Right, good evening, councillors. My name is Luke Elford from Woods Were. I am the solicitor representing Shetson Property Development Limited. I have with me Taran Singh, who is a director of Shetson Property Development. Taran, would you just like to say hello briefly?
Yeah, I'm here, Luke. Hi, good evening, everyone.
I also have with me Mark Altman, who is a hugely experienced ex-police officer and a licensing consultant who actually submitted this variation application. Mark, say hello, would you?
Good evening, I'm Mark Altman.
Thanks, Mark. So, and it was covered by your legal advisor in her advice, and I hope I've understood that advice correctly, that this is not a review of this premises license. And that's the first thing that I need to say to you. I need to get that out there straight out of the gate, but you would be forgiven, councillors, for thinking that this was a review, because the way the evidence has been presented to you is as if this was a review of your premises license, but it's not. In some ways, councillors, I'm disappointed that it's not a review, because that would have allowed me to address a great deal of some of the materials that you've been provided and have been put in front of you, but I don't have to do that because this is a variation, and we are this evening only focused on the things we are asking for by way of the variation. The terms of the variation, councillors, are very clear, and they are set out for you at page 12 of your agenda papers. Those are the matters that you need to determine, no more, no less. Prior to this hearing, I sent to you and to all of the objectors a very detailed letter, and I hope that you've had a chance to read it. If you haven't read it, I commend it to you when you break into closed session and when you're making your determination. My letter sets out for you the relevant legislation, and your learned legal advisor has also set some of that out for you briefly at the very start of this. I've also cut and pasted for you direct from the statute. It also deals with, councillors, a very important leading case on applications to vary premises licences. We're seeing less and less of case law in licensing subcommittees, and it only tends to get wheeled out on appeals, but it's a shame because it's very important. The case that we're referring to this evening is called Taylor and Manchester, or the Taylor case, and it should be within your paperwork. It is a High Court decision, and what that means is that unlike cases that you may have come across before, like Brewdog or other magistrates' court decision, you can't, and I'm sorry to say this, ignore it because it's law. I've highlighted for you the key paragraphs of the Taylor case. I don't necessarily expect you to have read all of the case, but your legal advisor will need to have read it, and I'm sure they have done. And they can, or I can, I'm sure, answer any questions that you may have about that case. You asked a question at the outset whether you can go further than what is in this variation and reduce our hours even further than what is being asked for. I'm afraid that's just not an option that is open to you this evening. And that's not open to you because of the way in which variations work and because of the Taylor case. And I'll give you an example, if the boot was on the other foot for a second. If I was coming to you, councillors, and asking for an increase in hours to, on a hypothetical license from, let's say, 11 p.m. until midnight, I cannot turn up at the hearing and say, oh, actually, I fancy 1 o'clock. It doesn't work like that. The decision is the hours we propose or not. Okay? So why are we making this variation application? Well, in short, we're making the application because we were invited to make it by the police and by your licensing team. The terms of the variation were agreed, and you will see that I've submitted the full extent of an email exchange between the officers, setting it all out where it's effectively signed off by both sides. We were asked to submit the variation, and we submitted it upholding our end of the bargain. We also operated immediately as if the variation had already been granted, and by that I mean we voluntarily cut back the hours for the public house area and operated as if the conditions were already in play. It's fair to say that we did not anticipate that our variation application would be seized on in the way that it has been. It's resulted in a large amount of objections to what amounts to an application to reduce some hours and add some conditions. It's resulted in a large amount of material being placed in front of you, the vast amount of which is not relevant because it doesn't address itself to what we are applying for. The material would be relevant if this was an application for review, but as I said to you at the outset, and as your legal advisor said to you at the outset, it's not. Now, I'm not going to admonish the objectors for not knowing that, although clearly the objectors are more sophisticated than your average local residents, and they do have some knowledge of the licensing process, having previously supported a review application. It's not their first rodeo, if you will. But I do need to ask you to treat with caution the paperwork that's been put in front of you, that's in your pack, and what will undoubtedly be said to you shortly, because you need to keep in mind that this is a variation. We're not, as a business, insensitive to the points that have been raised by the objectors globally. And for what it's worth, we are happy to engage with the ward councillors and with OGA and all the others who have made representations to this application. And we're happy to engage with them offline, provided that can be done constructively. This is not the forum for us to do that. This is to determine our variation application. We do, as a business, have some concern, I'm afraid, about some behaviour from some residents towards our staff and towards our customers. And when I say customers, councillors, that includes some vulnerable asylum seekers that we are housing on behalf of the UK government and the local council. So what we need to do, councillors, is you need to look at the things that are being requested, and you need to ask yourself, do these things promote the licensing objectives? Now, we submit, and I submit to you, that they have to be, because they amount to reductions in what this premises can provide under its current licence. They are the measures that were suggested by and agreed with your experts, your police and your licensing team. Your discretion to do anything else is extremely limited, and that is set out in both the Act, the guidance and the Taylor case. So, councillors, this evening I am asking you to approve the variation application exactly as it has been applied for on page 12 of your agenda papers. And a quick word before I wrap up, just on the future of the hotel. COVID-19 has been an absolute disaster for the hotel. I spoke to my client before this hearing this evening. Currently, there's at least 50% less trade, at least, than there was before the recent advice for people to stay at home. And that amounts to at least £5,000 a week less turnover. £6,000 in terms of a grant, which is what's been proposed by the government today, isn't even going to touch the sides. Look, councillors, I mean, there's not much more that I can tell you that's not in my letter and that I haven't already said. I'd just be saying the same things over and over again. Ultimately, we've worked in partnership with the responsible authorities to bring this application before you. We ask that you grant it. I'm happy to take any questions you may have. And obviously Mr. Singh is here as well to deal with any specific operational matters that I can't deal with. But I think I'm going to leave that for now and reserve anything else I have to say for once I've heard from the objectors.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Woods. Right. Can I ask members of the panel, do they have any questions of the applicant? Are you putting your hand up, Councillor Smith? Yeah. Right.
I have a couple of questions. The first one is, why have you only applied to reduce the hours in the bar? What happens in the function rooms? That's my first question.
So in the function rooms, the hours will stay as they are on the current licence. We have applied to reduce the hours for the public house area because that is what was agreed with licensing and agreed with the police, and that was the area that they asked us to reduce the hours for, and that's all agreed in the chain of emails that appears within your papers.
Okay, so will this solve the issues that the neighbours had? Because obviously if it doesn't, we're going to end up at a review hearing at some point, I would imagine. So, you know, a lot of the issues seem to have come from functions. So, you know, I appreciate you're cutting the hours in the bar, and I'm just asking, is that going to resolve the majority of the issues in your view?
In our view, councillors, yes, it is. And the functions that have caused problems have been functions within the bar. This is an application to reduce those hours in the bar. We're not asking you to reduce hours anywhere else, and nor can you, because that's not part of this application. It's not permissible.
Okay, thank you.
Is that all, Karen? Councillor Smith, is that all?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yes, it is. Sorry, Richard.
Harleen, Councillor Attawell, do you have any questions?
No questions, just a thought. Obviously, with everything going on with the pandemic, you know, how many parties will be taking place in the foreseeable future? But no, we can continue. I've got nothing. No.
Okay.
Just from me, very few, councillor. We've seen a huge diminution in bookings, at least 50%. And that's just the area that's subject to the variation. If we were to do that globally across the whole premises, the figures are astronomical.
Right. Okay, Harleen. Right. Mr. Woods, yeah, from myself, can you explain, I mean, you've implied that all of the activities that you're talking about take place in the bar, the public house bar area, which is the area that you're asking to reduce the times. I'm sure somewhere in my past, I attended a function there, but it was in the restaurant.
Oh no, sorry, councillor. We do hold activities elsewhere. What I'm saying to you is that this application is just to reduce the hours in the bar, because that is what we were asked to do, and that is what we've applied to do. We haven't applied to reduce the hours everywhere, nor can you as part of this variation application, because it's outside the remit of what is being applied for, and it's not a review application.
No, I'm just asking to try and get clarification as to what you're saying, in effect, that any functions that are in the various other rooms other than the bar could be taking place to the licensed hours. Yes.
Yes, I am, and there is no change proposed there, nor should there be one.
Okay. Right. So that means there could be functions going on in other parts of the hotel that could have caused some of the complaints that are made by residents.
Yes, but as I've said, this isn't part of that. That isn't.
No, I understand that. I'm just trying to understand. I need to understand that to be able to understand what it is that we're here to look at. Right. I don't have any other questions at this moment. Can I ask the officers if they have any questions? No?
No, I don't have any questions, Chair.
Okay. And then to other persons then, so that would include the objectors. Do you have any questions to ask Mr. Woods? Yes, Mr. Felsted.
Hi, Mr. Woods. I hope you can hear me. I hadn't realised until I saw all your later information that this was a two-pronged approach. I'd assumed from what I'd read about that we're looking at the whole of the Osterley Park Hotel. I can take on board what you're saying. All I'd say, even with the variation licensing we're talking about, I'd hope you bear in mind that it is a residential area and we do hear noise. I live on the Northumberland estate, and very often we do hear drums, music, noise, cars, people, even at some distance. So I'm concerned for the people who live locally near the Great West Road and much closer to the Osterley Park Hotel. So all I would hope is that whatever you do, you can do your best to try and reduce the noise as much as possible, and especially after hours as well. So it's not just a question of when you're closing, it's what's happened after you close, and really to try and have in place a system where noise is abated in the interest of residents and also in goodwill.
Thank you. First of all, just because people keep calling me Mr. Woods, I'm actually Mr. Elford from Woods Were.
I'm sorry. It's the way it's written on the screen.
Mr. Woods is my boss. Anyway, look, thank you, Mr. Felsted. It's very nice of you to appreciate that, and I'm glad that you have. We want to be a good neighbour, and can I say this? First and foremost, we are a hotel. We're in the business of selling sleep to people. So the closest residents to our licensable activities are our own hotel guests. And if we disturb them, we're not going to last very long as a hotel. We will do whatever we can to help with issues that have arisen, and we are more than happy to meet with people offline and to have discussions about specific problems that people have. But in terms of tonight's application, I just want to focus on the reduction of hours and the conditions that we're asking the councillors for.
Right, Mrs. Stryjek, yeah. You're muted.
Oh, yes, yeah, I've unmuted. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Right, Mr. Elford, I'm curious as to the statistic that you quote about 50% less trade. Does that include the whole of lockdown? Because I'm interested to know what the level of activity has been since we came out of lockdown, because that's where we, over the summer, there were events going on, functions going on almost every night, and maybe in even all 4 function rooms. So I don't think we've seen a reduction over the summer since we've come over lockdown, since we've come out of lockdown.
Thanks, Barbara. So the statistic I gave you was over the last 2 weeks since the advice to people to stay at home has come into play. I don't have the statistics for the whole of the year, nor are we going to be able to get them for you this evening.
So the 50% reduction is in the last 2 weeks, which is winter time anyway, and there would be fewer functions. We would be very interested to know how many functions there had been.
So, sorry, Barbara, these are the 2 busiest weeks of the year for the hospitality trade.
You were the hotel was extremely busy over the summer with weddings, almost every night, and maybe a number of them in each, maybe all the function rooms were being used. We live here, we can see, we know what's going on. I rest my case.
Your Honour.
Right. I'm looking for any other members or objectors if they wish to speak. Tony, I'll let you come in there, mate. But if that's the case, yeah, all right.
Hang on, is that Tony Leakey? Because I've had my hand up for a while, Richard.
Well, I can't see you.
Councillor Chowdhury had her hand up before me. I'll go after Councillor Chowdhury. Thank you.
I can't see you on the screen. That's why.
She's got her hand up in the.
I'll take
there she is.
You see me now?
Right, I can see it. Yeah. All right then.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair. So my question is in relation to the email that we were sent from Shetson, sorry. Don't know why I put an L in there. Where you've drawn our attention to point 78 saying, indeed, the provisions are prescriptive. Section 32 requires the authority to consider whether for the promotion of the licensing objectives, it is necessary to reject the application in whole or in part and/or to modify the conditions of the license to accommodate the variation in the context of the license as a whole. So here you're saying that the license that you currently have is a whole, but you're varying an element of that license, yet the panel should be able to either reject, accept, or modify that variation. Is that correct?
No, I think you've misunderstood. So what you can do in terms of our application is you can accept or reject the proposed reduction to hours.
But that's not what that says. That clearly states from licensing law, it's legislation which you have yourself highlighted, and that does not state that. That says you can modify or impose conditions.
It says you can modify the conditions that are proposed, but what you can't do is open up the license for a whole-scale review of the conditions.
So my question to you was, is the variation which you have applied for only to part of your license, and originally you had a license, right? And that covers the whole estate. So you're varying just one element of that whole license. Is that correct?
Yes, and Councillor, that's clearly set out on page 12 of the agenda papers. It says it in the very variation. It said it on the blue notice on site. It said it in the advertisement in the newspaper. I really don't understand why people are unclear about this.
I'm not unclear. I'm trying to get your view and your point here. So by saying that, what you're saying is that the panel are able to either modify that element of the license if they wish to. So they do have the right to say yes or no, or to modify that particular element that you are requesting to vary. And I'm not talking about the whole site, I'm talking about the element you're talking about, which is the bar.
So the councillors can accept or reject our proposed hours, and if they reject our reduction to hours, we go back to the later hours for the bar area, and they can accept or reject our conditions, or they can modify those conditions. What the councillors can't do is take our hours, knock further hours off, or add further hours on, or open up the licence whole scale to have a look at everything, because this is not a review of the premises licence.
But they can modify to reduce those hours in the bar based on that legislation piece there.
Councillor, they can't.
Why is that?
Because, Councillor, that is what the legislation and that is what Taylor and Manchester says. You cannot take our hours and cut us back further than what we have applied to do. This is a variation application. To put the shoe on the other foot, Councillor, if we applied to go until 4 in the morning, we couldn't change our minds and decide that we wanted to in fact go to 5 in the morning, already having made our application, nor could the councillors grant us more than what we had applied for.
I'm sorry, but in 32 section 32(5), it does say or modify, and you've highlighted that. So what are you saying?
Councillor, that's modifying conditions. conditions and hours are two different things.
So a condition is, you're saying you can only modify conditions and you can't modify the proposal of the times.
You can accept or reject the proposed hours. You cannot modify them. You can accept, reject, or modify the conditions.
Okay, thank you.
Right, is that all, Hunter?
Yes, that's all for now. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Lukey, you had a question.
Yeah, a couple of questions, Chair. Thank you. Look, this application is in the name of Shetson Properties, and they've got the license. But Shetson Properties, don't operate the hotel. It's operated.
There, Councillor.
Hang on a minute. Sorry, hang on. Let me finish.
Well, I was just going to answer the question.
No. Let me finish, and then you can answer me. All right? I can be as aggressive as you, and I won't.
Can we just get on with the job?
Yeah, all right. Well, if he gives me a chance, there, Chair. So
right,
this application is in the name. This license is held in the name of Shetson Properties. The whole operation is delivered by Green Gold Limited. Shetson Properties are titular holders of this, and they're not around. Who is in charge of these premises, and who is responsible for the mismanagement of this license?
Okay. Have you ever been to a pub, Councillor?
No.
Never?
Of course I have.
Right. Okay. So, not being clever for a second, if you've been to a pub, you'll have been to a Green King pub where Green King hold the licence, and there's then a publican that runs the pub. That's no different to the fact that Shetson have the licence and we have a hotel management company in place. There's also a designated premises supervisor who is the point of contact for the responsible authorities in respect of alcohol. This point about Shetson being a completely different entity is just a non-point.
Okay, well, it may be a non-point, but it does reflect that the people that are running it are probably not worthy of Shetson. But that's another matter for the panel to decide.
That would be your opinion, Councillor. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm not on the panel today. Well, I do sit on them from time to time. Now, you say you were invited. What in your mind or your client's mind? Why were you invited to revise the hours? What brought this about?
Okay, so we're not hiding. We've got nothing to hide. There was an incident, a nasty, unsavoury incident, outside the premises, and this was outside the public house area. And we were approached by the police and by the licensing authority to discuss that incident and to see what lessons could be learned from it. We attended meetings with them. We had discussions with them about what the variation would encompass. And if you look at the papers, Councillor, you'll see that there are the discussions and the outcome of those discussions within the papers. We were asked to make a variation. We worked in partnership. We did so promoting the licensing objectives.
So was this the only incident in the past 6 months that you're acknowledging or addressing with this?
Councillor, I think we're really getting off topic here, because what we're doing...
Straight question, mate. Straight question.
Okay. I don't have a full list of all the incidents. The police aren't here, but we responded to the concerns from the responsible authorities and we submitted a variation application. I'm not going to argue with people about what incidents took place or what incidents didn't take place, Councillor, because as you well know, being an experienced councillor who sits on...
You don't know how experienced I am, mate, all right?
I figure that you're pretty experienced and you sit on licensing subcommittees. In fact, I know that you sit on licensing subcommittees. You're an experienced councillor and you know that this is not a review application. It's not the venue to examine all of the incidents or all of the things that have been raised in the paperwork. We are considering this variation application and what is being asked for, no more, no less.
Okay, so we're not basing it on we're just basing it on this one incident that happened on the 3rd of October. We're not basing it on the other half dozen incidents that have happened since August.
A variation application has been submitted, and it's been submitted at the behest of the police and the licensing authority, who are the experts. And we've submitted an application in agreement with them. Have a look through the papers. You can see exactly what was requested, what was agreed, and where it should apply to.
Okay, you're sounding like a government minister now, but that's okay. Thank you, Chair.
Right, thank you, Tony. Right. So there are no other. Sorry, no. There are no other questions of the applicant. So I'm going to move on now to the objectors to make their case.
Will we be allowed to see the slide presentation?
Which slide presentation? Asking the question.
We submitted a slide presentation yesterday. Bill Lee knows all about it.
Well,
does Mr. Elford.
It's the officers that will answer that question then.
I've got no objection to it being shown. It's largely irrelevant, but by all means see it.
Okay.
Chair, this is Kenise here. There was.
Thank you. This will be with 3 people, so it's not one person doing a Mike Yarwood. Could we have the next slide, please?
Oh. What's happening?
You have to tell me. I'm just watching the screen.
Yes, so what's happening? Why can't we see the next slide?
Slide number 2.
Who's operating the slides?
Sonia is operating the slides, I believe, Chair, for IT. Is there a problem, Sonia?
No, as soon as you let me know which one to change a slide, I will change the slide. So I've changed it to the first slide now.
Thank you, Sonia. Just very quickly, for those that may not know OGRA, it's the Osterley White Green Residents Association. It represents the residents of most of Osterley and Spring Grove Ward. It's been around 35 years and it works on behalf of the residents to monitor, protect and enhance Osterley and its environs. It gives a voice to residents to maintain all that is good in the area. We're proud of the fact that it's multicultural, multi-faith, and it's got a very low level of crime. We are not anti-business, and in many respects, we are very much pro-business. We do look at the Osterley Park Hotel as a valued business and neighbour, and local residents would like it to succeed and to use it as a pub and a restaurant. It does operate in the hospitality sector, and whilst we appreciate that will come with some disruption, and at times the behaviour of the customers and guests can't be fully controlled, we cannot continue with the level of disruption to our lives, our health and well-being that we have had to put up with this last year. We've worked successfully with other businesses in the area, for example, the Access storage site at Gillette Corner, where it was initially planned to put up a tower block, but eventually we saw cooperation and the building is now of an acceptable height. And we are currently working with Brentford Football Club to redevelop their training ground on Jersey Road. And this is the sort of relationship we'd like with the OPH. Could I have the next slide, please? As a general overview, we can see these are the issues that concerns the residents. And in particular to do with licensing, we feel environmental health, antisocial, traffic and parking issues because of functions, and human safety.
Okay, so it's over to me now, Barbara Striak. So we sent with our representation on the 2nd of December a 45-page document listing the problems we've encountered this year. So here are a few examples. Can I have the next slide, please? So on Saturday, the 8th of May, an illegal party in a large marquee in the car park flouting COVID restrictions during lockdown with very loud music blaring across the area during the afternoon and evening. Next slide, please. On Friday, the 9th of July, Tuesday, the 27th of July, Wednesday, 11th of August, guests milling about outside in the car parks, which were full of cars, music blaring out through open windows and doors of the hotel, young children running around the car parks and the roads nearby, unsupervised. Now, this was late in the evening and after 11 p.m. and often into the early hours, for example, 1:15 a.m. This was all very noisy and kept local residents awake as they were trying to sleep with open windows as it was summertime. On Sunday, the 15th of August, and here's a quote from a local resident. The noise started about 3:15 a.m. on Sunday morning, shouting and screaming. I called 999 and reported it. Apparently someone else reported it too. One car revving, then another honking as I was waiting to speak to someone. Noise carried on till about 5:30 a.m. when I managed to get some sleep again. Can I have the next slide, please? And here's a quote from another resident. So just to inform you of noise level at Terminal Lounge Bar Ostley Hotel on Saturday, August the 14th, with loud music and shouting going on until 5:30 a.m. Again on Sunday, the 15th of August, until 11:30 p.m. Since lockdown ceased, there have been many other occasions of music and shouting into the early hours. This has also happened on other frequent occasions. We've lived opposite this establishment for 43 years, with no problems until the last few years. It has now become a nightmare for us, causing stress and disturbed sleep. Next slide, please. On the 29th of August, just after midnight, 12:15 a.m., a local resident said to us, last night past midnight, they set off fireworks and then after 5 minutes decided to set off honking and tooting. Another resident said, I saw they were let off in the car park very close to the main road. This is extremely dangerous to passing traffic who could be distracted, not to mention the loud noise so very late at night. The hotel has had many chances to control their guests, and if they really wanted to secure their license, they would be firmer in dealing with their patrons. It should not have to fall to one security guard to control the guests, as some of these people can be quite intimidating. I feel sorry for the poor people next door with young children who must be terrified with the fireworks going off. It's not pleasant for any of us. My other neighbour, a few houses further down, has spoken to of people chatting loudly by their cars parked outside their house. This is a residential area, and as residents should not have to put up with inconsiderate patrons of the Ostley Park Hotel. Next slide, please. On Sunday, the 12th of September, a local resident reported loud music from an event. A resident in Wood Lane was woken at 3 a.m. by loud music coming from the hotel. Next slide, please. So here we come to that fateful night on the 3rd of October. A passing resident told us, I was returning home from work, passing the entrance exit at Wood Lane at 12:15 a.m. As I passed, there were two separate parties arguing by their vehicles and security personnel standing at a distance, merely observing. Politely, I approached the bickering parties and requested they lower their voices to take their disagreement inside. I won't furnish you with their responses, but needless to say, security were not interested. And after that, we had the alleged stabbing at around 1 a.m., resulting in 8 police cars and 2 ambulances attending, and some arrests being made further up Wood Lane later that night. Next slide, please. And it's this sort of behaviour that we don't think is acceptable. It's just not acceptable. And it's in the middle of a residential area where young children are sleeping. People who are working shifts or having to get up early in the morning to go to work are trying to sleep and to get some well-earned rest. I think the resounding answer to that question would be not just from local residents, but from anyone working or staying at the Ostley Park Hotel and attending its functions would categorically be no, we shouldn't have to put up with this. Next slide, please.
So actually, what the residents want is not really an awful lot, to be fair. It costs very little. We would like licensing hours that are acceptable in the middle of a residential area, with 4 function rooms operating without disturbing the local residents, and proper levels of enforcement by the management of the Osterley Park Hotel and the council. Could you put the next slide on, please? So from a proposal, this is what we would like to see, and a couple of comments that follow. The Osterley Park Hotel haven't given any reasons for longer opening hours in the function rooms. It is in the middle of a residential area. The locals, residents, have nothing against events being held, but surely not at the cost of their health and well-being. And these hours are proposed to prevent public nuisance.
Next slide, please. This is Mike O'Brien. I'm a resident not far from the hotel. The Osterley Park Hotel is obliged to abide by numerous licence conditions, some of which were imposed during the licence review in February 2018. It appears that many of these are not being adhered to. We would welcome evidence from the hotel and the council that the following conditions are being adhered to in both Terminal 6 Lounge and the function rooms. The following are 4 of the current conditions. Condition 18, a noise limiting device must be installed and must operate at all times when regulated entertainment takes place on the premises. The device must be of a type indication set at a level of 95 decibels or other such level as agreed in writing by the responsible authority for minimizing and preventing the risk of pollution and to the environment and or harm to human health. Condition 22, customers will not be permitted to remove from the premises any drinks supplied by the premises, alcohol or otherwise, in open glassware containers. Condition 27, customers will not be permitted to remove from the premises into the western car park, which is identified on Plan A and hatched in black. Condition 28, the west car park doors and windows are to be kept shut after 9 p.m. except emergency egress. The following 2 conditions have been proposed by the hotel as part of this license variation. The first one is that premises will not be held organised by external promoted external
Sorry, can we have the next slide, please?
I'll repeat that. The first one is the premises will not hold any externally promoted events. The second one is that a metal detection device shall be randomly used by door supervisors to search patrons for weapons. OGRA is proposing, is there another, can I have another slide, please? OGRA is proposing a number of conditions which we think would make living next to the hotel acceptable to local residents. And they include no gathering guests or children outside after 9 p.m. Children to be supervised at all times. Windows and doors of all function rooms to be closed after 9 p.m. No alcohol or food to be consumed outside the hotel, in the car parks or in front of Terminal 6 Lounge. No outdoor events. Noise limits for music in function rooms. No music or drum beats outside at any time. No fireworks. CCTV to cover both car parks and outside areas and stored for 28 days to allow police and council to access. Door from the kitchen in the western car park to be closed after 9 p.m. Loading of vehicles in car parks to be kept as quiet as possible after 9 p.m. Glass and dangerous rubbish left in the car park to be cleared by 7:30 a.m. the next morning because of the Nishkam school children walking past on their way to school. Security staff to be on position from the beginning to the end and should be there for all events, 2 in the car park and 2 outside Terminal 6 entrance. And finally, no temporary event notices. However, whatever the conditions are imposed on the hotel management and council must ensure compliance. And we request that a named council officer keeps AGWA informed of the adherence to these conditions on a regular basis, say fortnightly. And finally, in summary, Ogwa believes that the proposals that have been put forward by the hotel do not go far enough to address the problems that we have outlined.
Can we have the next slide, please?
Other establishments in the area, such as the Indian Gymkhana, Grasshoppers, Thistleworth, Wickham House, provide alcohol for consumption on the premises, which all finish at an earlier time than the proposed times that the hotel has put forward in their application. It is the very late closing hours and no control from the hotel that contribute to the noise and the disturbance from the hotel, which is the primary cause of concern for local residents. There does not appear to be a case for the closing hours of the hotel to be longer than other establishments in the area. We do not believe that the closing times we have put forward are unreasonable, given the very residential nature of the area. Residents are keen to see that the Osterley Park Hotel succeed and contribute to the well-being of the community. That's the end of the presentation.
Right. That's your presentation finished, is it, Miss?
Yes.
Sorry. Okay, fine. Yes, you're inside, just inside your 15 minutes. I made it. I don't know, my colleague is actually taking the time, but yeah. Right, okay. Can I move on then to questions?
I think Mr. Felsted just wanted to say a few words as well.
Well, you've got about 60 seconds, so Mr. Felsted.
I'm here now. I'd just like to see, I want to see the Osterley Park Hotel being a successful business, but I'd like them to be able to do that in consulting together, working with the local community, and to put in measures in place that can make that work. But I want them to be a success, but also want the residents to be successful as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Felsted. Councillor Smith, you have questions?
I do. Well, just one really. I'd just like to know, have things improved since the new hours have been operating in the bar?
It's difficult to say because it's now going into winter time, so not as many people as are outside. So could that be a coincidence? I don't know, but I understand that there have been functions over the weekend, and I don't know whether Anu would like to say whether there has been any disturbance. She's the one who lives the closest. But there's still, I mean, we have still heard music. I mean, the thing is, we don't know whether it's coming from the Terminal 6 bar or whether it's coming from the function rooms. Most of the problems over the summer were coming from the function rooms.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Did you have a question, Councillor Attewell? No? Okay. Can I just, really just a comment, but there was a comment made in the tail end of your report about no tens. I don't know if you're aware, but the council's licensing committee or licensing panel has no authority over the issuance of tens.
Yeah, if I could say something about that. So when the TENS application or notification went in the summer, apparently licensing didn't.
You've gone mute. I can't hear you.
Required 3 days.
I'm sorry, we missed what
sorry,
you
said. I think I froze.
Yeah.
Sorry, this is a regular problem on Teams. So when the TENS notification went in the summer, I understand that licensing didn't pick it up within the 3 days to notify the police and the ward councillor so that they could say something, or, you know, whether they could react in any way. But the problem is that whenever there has been a TENS, there's been a problem.
Yeah,
loud music, antisocial behaviour.
Yeah, I think you're mixing up licensing with the officers who have a responsibility to notify the police. That's the licensing officer, and the licensing panel, which has no authority over the issuance of TENS.
Sorry, no, I realise that. No, I'm talking about the officers.
Well, I think, you know, that, yeah, but that's outside the remit of this committee.
But it's the thing that has caused us a lot of problems.
Right,
We
I'm
have
sorry, then
summarised all the problems.
can I suggest to you then that you take that up with the licensing officers that you have a problem with what they're doing. It's not an issue that we can deal with. Right. Any other questions? No? Okay, so I move on then to...
Sorry, Councillor, I did have my hand raised. Am I allowed to ask a quick question?
Sorry, yes, Mr. Elford. I didn't notice. My apologies.
It's really a very small thing. You said that we've proposed opening hours within our application. I just want to be clear that you understand that we already have these hours on our license. You do understand that, don't you?
Yes, I understand very well, and I can't understand why the hotel was ever allowed to have licensing hours until 2 o'clock in the morning.
Well, we do, and that's not what we're here to determine today, unfortunately.
I know, but we are coming at this from a pragmatic standpoint, from a pragmatic point of view of residents who are living locally, and we are telling you how we are affected and what we would like to see changed and improved to make the hotel a success and to make to keep residents happy. We'd like to use the hotel, we'd like to use the bar and the function rooms, but at the moment that's not being.
Yeah, can I suggest to you, Ms. Steinjack, that isn't the issue here, that we do not have that responsibility. There are ways which you can deal with that, but it's not up to me to advise you.
If I can just say, at the beginning of August, we did request a licensing review, and we started to process that, and we were then told to pull back from that because there was a license variation going in.
Who told you that?
We were informed of that by, I think, it came from licensing.
Well, that's a pretty broad brush, but okay.
I have correspondence.
I'm sorry. You have that. You have that power as a body to call for a review.
We did.
That's I'm not going to get any further than that, and that's that's something separate. But you can't use this panel meeting as if it is a review.
We were led to believe that through this process we could ask for different hours and for additional conditions. That's the information that we were given.
Well, we will clarify that at a later stage this evening. Right. Is that all, Mr. Isaac? Yeah, right. Okay.
Sorry, that's all from me. Thank you.
Right. Okay. Councillors, I'm calling you on now. You've got 15 minutes between you if you wish to make a statement.
Shall I go first then?
It's up to you. I'm not going to choose.
So, Chair, Stephen Maunders had his hand up as well. Chair?
Yeah, I'm listening.
Stephen Maunders had his hand up as well. Perhaps he wanted to ask a question, and that was up around the same time as Mr. Elford's.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that, Mr. Maunders. You're not.
That's okay.
Unless your picture is on the main screen, I don't catch it. So
no, I can appreciate there's a lot of pictures on there to keep track of this evening.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Absolutely. Just coming at it from as one of the responsible authorities, there's been correspondence and not going into the legal arguments that there have been with regards to the scope of the panel. Obviously, Mr. Elford's own submission stated that the variation does represent an alternative to review and an opportunity for the applicant to address some of or all of the licensing objectives that there are.
Sorry, who's your question being?
Yeah, is this a question?
Well, it's with regards to the unintended consequences of actions that there have been from this variation application. So there have been alterations to the premises inside.
I think this is Mr. Maunders' presentation, not a question for Ogre.
No, it's not a question for Ogre. No, that's correct. Yes. This is I'm obviously trying to have an opportunity to actually put in from the present representation that was made as a responsible authority.
Yeah, I mean, you really should have been allowed to go first.
Hmm.
I'm sorry, it was me that dropped out.
No, that's fine. Obviously, I'll step back at this point if it's just
Oh,
questions
still
on
frozen.
Ogra, and then step back in again as appropriate.
I think the order
Well,
was the public, then the councillors, then yourself. I think that's the order that we're following.
That's fine then.
No, the order is, this is questions of the residents. But Mr. Maunders seemed to be posing a question of the applicant, and I'm afraid that that opportunity has passed. Right.
It
So
wasn't
can
a question
we
at
move?
all. It was a representation. So
Well, then you can't make a representation. That's been made, and the time was exhausted. I did mention that at the end, that the 15 minutes allocated were taken.
by whom?
Sorry, he's not resident.
I'm not a resident councillor. I'm a responsible
Well,
authority.
then I'm sorry, but you were whether if you're not a resident, I don't know what grounds you're here, so I can't really make a decision.
Chair, may I interrupt, please? It's Bill, the clerk. Stephen is part of the responsible authority, along with Charlie Hennessy and
oh well,
Barry.
then
they'll
that would have
get
been
there
nice to have been introduced to that.
We have been introduced previously, councillor, but there we go. That's quite all right.
I do a lot of meetings, Mr. Maunders. Right. So what is it you're here as?
Well, as I said, if this point is for questions for Olga, I'll step back now and allow that to continue, and then obviously at an appropriate point.
No, if you're there as speaking on behalf of the officers, that's fine.
Yep. Okay. I mean, just to come in, obviously the proposal with reduction of hours, we have no objection to that, and obviously
It's
that
gone
will
off.
bring things. Can you hear?
I can, but it's the stability is very bad at the moment.
Okay, I'll try my best, obviously, to say.
Yeah, I don't know if our technician is able to deal with it. Do we have a technician available, Bill?
We've got Motion and Sonia. I could hear you though, Stephen. I don't know about anybody else. I can see.
Yeah, no, my screen blanked out twice.
I think that might be on your end then, Richard.
Yeah.
I think it is, Chair.
Okay, well, I'm with you now anyway. It only blinked out for a few seconds. Right.
Councillor Richard, I can give you a call if you like, if you're still having problems.
No, I'm okay. It's just that one issue that went on and off.
Okay.
I'm back again now, so let's continue.
Okay, I mean, just going back to the core proposal, obviously a reduction in hours is something that we, from an environmental health perspective, would support. In relation to the other issues that there are, the variation does represent an alternative to review to some degree, and obviously provides an opportunity to discuss other aspects of the licensing objectives, which potentially there may be consequences arising from the variation that this will impact upon. One of those is there have been layout changes within the premises that potentially could affect the acoustics. There are only two limiting devices that are set within the premises. One is within the pub and one was within a function room. Obviously, the latest plan shows there are 4 function rooms. So there is a question as to whether that condition is currently being adequately met. So should there be limiters set for each of those rooms if they are operating as separate functions? Also, there's obviously a creation of a separate separation between the regulated entertainment on the premises and obviously monitoring regarding that, whether something is arising on the pub side or on the hotel side does come into question on that, because you're creating an artificial subdivision in the license where currently it only covers the whole premises.
Right, I understand that, and that's a concern.
The limit that's currently set is 95 dB, and it says obviously that is at the also in discussion with the responsible authority to set at a level that is appropriate to prevent public nuisance. And I would question whether that currently is being adequately met. We also know that there was an event that was held on the 14th, 15th of August that the promoter did not use the limiting device. The DJ was set up at the front end of the premises and was operating an entirely independent PA system from that provided by the premises and didn't use the limiting device that was obviously part of the conditions of the previous or the existing license.
Was action taken at that time, Mr. Maunders?
Well, that was all partly rolled in with these discussions with the licensing team and what arose as a review of the overall premises and management at the time. Yes, and discussions were had on that aspect. There, as far as we're aware, there have not been any subsequent issues with PAs not being used with within the limiting device. We haven't had witnessed events where that has occurred.
Sorry, Chair, it's Kenny's. I think the points Mr. Maunders is raising is moving away from today's application. Today's application is in relation to variation of the license, and the submissions being made to the panel by Mr. Maunders seem to be moving towards a review and whether or not there's been a breach. And so if I could remind the panel that it should be focused on the application to vary.
Okay, that does leave my question, which I was going to pose to Mr. Elford, but that leaves it a bit out on a limb. In fact, I'm going to take the opportunity anyway to pose the question, and you can ignore it if you wish, Mr. Elford. So,
I would not do that to you, sir. I will certainly answer your question.
Right. All I'm going to ask is that the points that were made by Mr. Maunders about the issues that the licensing authority have got with their officers, are you able to take those into account in relation to today's discussion, or would you see them outside of that?
The things that Mr. Maunders is talking about, decibel noise limiters and things for the function rooms, are certainly outside the scope of what we're applying for today. Why don't I suggest this? Let's take the discussion with Mr. Maunders offline. Why doesn't he come to the premises at a time that's convenient to him? We'll look at all of the noise limiters for all of the different rooms, and we'll involve Mr. Maunders in the process of setting noise limits at the premises for moving forwards, and he can have a look at the systems in detail with his technical expertise. We'll probably get an acoustic consultant along as well, or if Mr. Maunders doesn't want to be involved in setting the limiters, because I know some councils are reticent about that.
I set the previous limiter, so I'm quite happy to set this one.
There you go. And I know some councils, just for your benefit, some councils don't like their officers to set the limiters, because then when there are complaints, the premises license holder, me, will always say, but it was set by the officer. So instead you have it set by an officer from the Institute of Acoustics, who then becomes the fall guy. We're easy either way. But let's take that discussion offline. Let's deal with that separately. But in terms of tonight's application, the variation we're making, those are different issues.
Right, fine. So you've answered my question. Thank you very much, Mr. Elford. My question was whether, in fact, exactly that you could take this off panel and resolve the issues, and Mr. Maunders can take those things directly and have a direct discussion. Are you comfortable with that, Mr. Maunders?
I've got no problem with that at all. I'm quite happy to do that, and I can speak to Tara and to Mr. Elford offline. That's fine.
That's good. Okay, so let's move on. Thank you, Mr. Maunders. Is there anything else at all? No, you've gone. Right. Right, I'm trying to find out where I am. That's officers. Right. So I'm going to now move to the final part of this meeting. It's asking those who are making representations if they've any final comments to make.
Councillors. What about the councillors, mate?
Sorry, I apologise, Tony. Somebody's got a telephone ringing, but right, I apologise, Tony. Where did we get to on there? I thought Unsa was talking, wasn't she? Did she?
I was going to, but then you moved back to Stephen.
Right. Yeah. All right. All right. We got the interjection in there that took it off. Right. Okay. Unsa, can you continue?
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thanks for allowing me to speak this evening. So Ostley Park Hotel is an establishment that really should be a jewel in Ostley's crown, one that families, residents and visitors alike can enjoy. Unfortunately, instead, it's causing us a lot of grief and hassle in the community. We'll take you in turn through the 4 licensing objectives that this establishment infringes on at the moment. So firstly, to prevent crime and disorder. As we've heard today, there was a incident which included stabbing, which led to this panel meeting. As Councillor Lukey mentioned earlier, there's 5 incidents that have involved grievous bodily harm, common assault, criminal damage to motor vehicles, all taking place in the last 6 months. Additionally, lockdown rules are broken, a party was hosted illegally, and no, it wasn't just cheese and wine. Secondly, public safety. A number of vehicles leave the premises at high speeds. There have been glass shards and bottles left on pathways, which obviously are not safe. There doesn't appear to be much control from the venue in terms of protecting residents from the patrons. We need more security, more staff who enforce against antisocial behaviour. Thirdly, to prevent public nuisance. Vehicles entering and leaving the venue cause blockages along the Great West Road. Noise and fireworks from the venue late into the evening and early hours of the morning have been reported to me by local residents. They've had their sleep disturbed when the council does not permit fireworks at those hours. In a previous application, a condition was placed that doors should be put in place and used to prevent noise from leaking, but this is not being enforced. How can we trust the proprietors to uphold what they're signing up to and what they're proposing when they have failed to do this previously? Patrons leaving the venue at late hours are not being considerate of our residents. They're loud, they sound their car horns in the car park when they leave the venue. Bins have not been cleared properly and are often overflowing, resulting in litter being strewn across the floor, which is then blown into the local area. Enforcement are carrying out regular site visits to enforce this, but we're wasting our resources here when the venue should just do what it should do and use the bins appropriately. And fourthly, but importantly, this was listed off earlier by Ms. Harbour, that I also put in something about protecting children from harm. I have received reports about stones that have been thrown at children when passing this venue. Again, where is the enforcement from the venue? I've heard from parents whose kids can't sleep because there's loud noises coming out from this. We're not protecting our children if we allow such behaviour to continue.
Councillors,
Let me finish. I'm not asking you to review it. These are the conditions that I'm basing my next point on.
Review points.
I'm sorry, but he's eating into my time, Chair.
Well, your time can wait for a second.
Chair, why are you
Sorry, that's...
Look, wait a minute.
Exactly.
Yeah. Look, wait a minute. Right, I'll ask you, what is it, Mr. Ilford, you'll ask?
Councillors, these are points that would be applicable if this was a review application. They are not relevant to this variation. I think you need to take some advice from your legal advisor about what is relevant in the context of this application.
Okay.
Listen, continue to
that's all right. I've got your point. That's fine.
So I'm
these are tactics. These are tactics by the applicant.
Right. Tony, please.
Sorry, we've been told we can put conditions onto this variation many times now, Mr. Elford, and yes, you can, based on that case that you shared. Anyway, let me finish my.
Right, we'll deal with that when we come to that point at the end of the meeting. So
what I'm requesting
in adjournment.
Thank you.
Carry on, Unsa. So
what I'm requesting is that the panel this evening review the proposed hours. And I know we said you can't reduce them, but if you can, then yes, please do reduce them. As a council, I want this establishment to thrive, but I don't want it at the expense of the safety and well-being of my residents. And until that can be satisfied, I urge the panel to take action. The case that's been referenced by Mr. Elford, the Taylor Manchester City Council, was about common sense. It was about a resident appealing against a decision made by the council. Yet here we are today, and the council hasn't yet made a decision. So common law says it's appropriate to have these discussions and see if a compromise can be reached. And if this is not possible, then it seems that a full review perhaps is warranted. Thank you.
Thank you, Unsa. Tony, you've got something to say?
Is it my turn as a councillor to speak?
Yes.
Or you're not going to, they're not, or you're going to, and when questions are asked, they're going to be asked to both Unser and myself.
Well, you see, this is the difficulty I have, Tony, because under the normal, previous procedures, councillors have not been questioned, but then they've been limited to what they've got to say. So in the meantime, as you've not been limited to what you've got to say, then I can't stop people asking questions of you. So, Tony, yes, you may speak.
Okay. Look, I won't say an awful lot more than what's already been said by the residents and by my colleague, Councillor Unser Chowdhury. We have spent a lot of time on this, not just on the licensing matters here, but also on all the other aspects of the Hounslow Park Hotel. As far as we're concerned, any licensing, and you should take advice. You should take advice, licensing panel. Just because a line has been put around the bar, we are talking about 764 Great West Road, the whole site. Okay, and this is what we should be. We would ask you to concentrate on, based on that whole litany of problems that have been raised by residents, the ones that have been mentioned by Councillor Chowdhury, and the ones that I would add to. Look, we've had to draw in Transport for London, you know, and who rarely enforce the Great West Road, because generally it's been quite well managed. But what we've got here, we've got people parking in the parking in the first lane next to parking and holding up traffic in one of the lanes of the 3 lanes of the A4. We've got people parking in front of people's driveways there, on the pavement, on the grass verges. Our enforcement can't cope with it. It's very limited. We've had fights, and yes, this license review has come about through the event on the 3rd of October.
Tony, this isn't a license review.
Well, look, hang on. Well,
you just said this.
Look, hang on a sec. The issues here is the whole thing. It's the whole thing. And these hours, even if we talk about the hours, well, maybe then you should reduce the hours to 0. And we don't want that. We want this. We do want these premises to thrive. And the last time a review came up, we did have a really good, dialogue between residents and the management at the time of the hotel. So the issues here, all those licensing principles are being failed here. Noise levels, you can't. We hear you can't split the noise levels here, but we've got noise levels coming out of all these function rooms, plus one extra that was built on clandestinely. And that's a planning matter, and that's under scrutiny from the planning enforcement people. So I do believe that councillors here can apply the new hours. They can apply the new hours if it's not a whole review, but they can apply the new hours to all function rooms of this of these premises at 764 London Road, Great West Road, and you should do that. That is what we ask you to do, okay? And that's what I believe you have got we'll have some legal advice here on this, okay? And the other one is more security staff. I don't care. They've got 2 people. They had 2 people or 1 or 2 people down at Terminal 6, and they were doing nothing when other stuff was going on outside. We want our residents, the people that we try to represent, we want our residents to sleep easy and have people actively enforcing the conditions of this license here, and not just turning a blind eye to fights and stabbings and fireworks and noise. So this is, I don't know why we're doing, I don't know why we have got this. If people want to work together, we've had plenty of opportunities to work together these past 6 months, and the licensees approaching us. I feel this is not really working, and I will ask you, colleagues, councillors, to address this thoroughly and extend these hours across. Don't just accept it for the bar, extend it across the whole piece here. Sorry, one more thing. No, one more thing. No, one more thing. What we have had as well, and I did mention it earlier, and it was almost dismissed by the applicant. We have got 6 incidents, and this is from our police team. This is from our Ostley and White Green police team.
Sorry, councillors, this is not in the papers, and it's not in Councillor
I don't care, mate. I don't care. I don't care. You were accepting it before. You were focusing on it before.
Look, can we stop in an argument between 2 members? You go through the chair.
Who's not a member?
Chair.
Richard, we need to have some order in the
Sorry,
meeting, please.
Councillor Loki, you need to stay focused on what's been presented in the agenda pack. You cannot introduce anything new.
Okay.
Chair, can I just say, I've been very forgiving about paperwork and things that have been brought up during this hearing, but I cannot have members.
You're muted, Mr.
Sorry, Mr. Alford, you've gone on mute halfway into your.
Sorry, look, what I was saying was this. I've been extremely forgiving about the things that have been brought up, which are review points. I've tried to stay out of this as much as I possibly can. What I cannot have is a member of your licensing committee asking you to do things that are illegal and introducing new evidence that was not part of his representation, because that is patently wrong. That's all.
Sorry, Chair, can I just come in there? Because I did in my representation say that there had been several incidents at this venue, and that bit included the stabbing.
That's fine, but you can't read police reports that no one else has got.
No, but he's just giving me further information about those incidents.
Right. The issue is quotation from reports that we can't read.
I don't have to read them. I was doing what Councillor Chowdhury was doing.
Well, Tony, I'm saying that's you know, we're going to finish it there.
As we know, you always know best, Chair.
That's the job of the chair. Right. So can we move on then? Right. I'm now going to ask the applicant now if they wish to respond to any of the questions from the officers.
Sorry, Chair, you've lost me there. Am I?
Councillors, sorry.
Am I asking questions of the councillors, or am I responding?
Sorry, that's a mistake.
Sorry, I apologise. You just lost me there.
Sorry, we're getting out of order. Right, no, I'm moving on now to final comments. Actually, now.
Okay, I think the order that I read was that I will go last.
You will go last, yeah. So I'm going on to final comments. So initially from the objectors.
Sorry, I think we made our final comment in our summary. Do you want me to repeat?
Well, no, you can make any final comments you wish, but you cannot introduce any new material. So it's just refining on what you've already said.
I think I would support what our councillors have said and what we've already said, and that is that we would like the Ostley Park Hotel to be successful and to work cooperatively with the local community, so that we don't have to suffer what we've suffered in the last 6 months. And that includes not just the Terminal 6 lounge, but everything that's happening around the hotel. And most of the problems have come from the function rooms, not just from the Terminal 6 lounge. It used to be the Terminal 6 lounge a number of years ago before lockdown, but since the hotel has been reconfigured, then not the hotel, but the main building has been reconfigured. Most of the antisocial behaviour has come from the function rooms. And we would ask for the licensing hours to be cut back further to, as we stated, Sunday to Thursday, 11 p.m. and Friday to Saturday, 11:30 p.m. Because other establishments in the area do not go later than that. And I think it would be better then to, it would be more, at least we don't have the noise going on until 1:30 or 2 in the morning. But the other thing is enforcement. We need enforcement from the management of the hotel to make sure that the conditions are implemented. And also we need overseeing from the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Isaac. Right. Okay. I ask Mr. Alford now to make your final comments and close this section of the meeting.
Sorry, don't you need final comments from the officers and the councillors and then me at the very end and wrap up this?
No. Okay, take your final comments. Councillors do not link in with final comments.
Okay, sure. So look, you've heard from various people that they want us to succeed, but they want us to succeed in the manner whereby you chop all our hours back and condition us up to our eyeballs, which is something that legally speaking, councillors, you cannot do. This is a variation application, and I'm going to read to you from paragraph 77 of Taylor and Manchester. First, an application to vary never triggers a general review of the licence. Okay. I commend to you my letter that I sent in. I'm completely mindful of the concerns of residents and the concerns of councillors and the concerns of officers. Listen, we are more than happy to address those concerns outside of this process. This process is a variation to our licence to reduce the hours for the public house area and to amend one condition and add a condition. It's nothing more than that. We are not asking to increase hours. We are not asking to do anything that we are not already permitted to do. And you are not being asked to open up and review the entire licence. That's a completely separate application. Councillors, you've listened extremely patiently to a lot of things that you shouldn't have had to listen to, and a lot of things that, and read a lot of things that you shouldn't have had to read. But legally, this is a very straightforward decision, and it's whether or not to grant the hours or refuse the hours. And if you refuse the hours, they go back later that we've asked for. They will go back to being later. And then it's whether or not you want to grant our conditions that we're proposing or modify them or refuse them. That's it. Nothing more. This is not a review of the licence. You know, it's been said so many times, but people are still asking you to do things that are completely illegal. As you rightly pointed out, Councillor Foote, you were asked to ban temporary event notices. You can't. The conditions that were proposed by OGA, none of those are conditions at all. They're just words.
It's OGRA, not OGA.
Oh, sorry, I apologise. OGA.
Nice try.
OGA.
You keep doing it, mate. You keep doing it, mate. All right.
You're doing it on purpose. It's
Can we just get some control here?
Sorry, can you please stay focused on the topic rather than going...
Apology.
Thank you. Sorry for those interruptions, councillors. So, look, this is a variation under Section 34 of the Licensing Act 2003. How you determine the application is clearly set out in the legislation and in the case law. You are being pushed, corralled and railroaded into making this application something it is not, which is a review under Section 51. And to be perfectly frank, councillors, what happens is if you treat this as a review and we come away from this application that we've made in agreement with the police and with the licensing authority, is that this all goes off to the magistrates' courts, where the courts will apply the law. And that's all I have to say. Thank you very much for listening, councillors.
Right, thank you, Mr. Alford. Right, where are we? Back to Nicola to ask to advise on procedures and options open.
Sorry, councillor, it should be myself as the legal advisor.
Sorry, yeah, right, yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
go on.
Thank you. Thank you. The panel will now retire and go into the deliberation room to consider the application and the representations they've heard, read. The panel has the option to either grant the application to vary the license or grant in part or in full, subject to extra conditions or modification, or alternatively, the panel can refuse today's application. The panel will, oh, sorry, let's go back. During deliberation, it will be just the panel members who will be present, and I will be present with the members to advise them, but I will not be taking part in the decision-making process. Chair, normally you allow 15 minutes for deliberation, but we do say that if it takes longer, then this will be conveyed to those in the hearing room through our support team. Thank you.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much. So I'm now going to ask my colleagues to retire to the deliberation room. And as said, we will keep a check on the time. And if it looks like it's going beyond 15 minutes, then we will send a message back. We would hope that in the meantime, the audience that we've had tonight will remain, especially those who are the objectors or the presentation, would remain. But obviously, if we do go beyond 15 minutes, we can understand if you've got other pressing matters. But we will let you know if we're going beyond 15 minutes. So we're now retiring, and it's 9:30 almost. So we're right off to the deliberation room. Councillor Smith, Councillor, where is she?
Thank you, councillors.
All right.
Hopefully we'll get.
Mike, David, just remember that everyone is still on the session, even if they've got cameras off. I think somebody was speaking there.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Mike and David, yeah, we are still recording. So I'd advise you to switch cameras and microphones off at this point and or await sounds coming out of your computer as people return. Thank you.
Right, we've returned. I'm looking down. I think most of the people are present. I see Mr. Elford is there. I can't see. I'm looking for the. Oh God, I've got so many names. It abbreviates them, so I don't know who they all are. No, that's yes, Ogre are here. Yeah, I see Barbara is here. So yes, she's there. Fine. Okay. It's all right. I wanted to make sure that we got the players that are there. Right, and councillors, yes, councillor. I don't know the other ones. Right. Okay. Right, the panel have carried out their review of what, sorry, I'll change that word. I'm not going to use the word review. That we've carried out our investigation into everything that's been said this evening. Can I say that we are being asked to review the hours in the pub part of the premises. We're not being asked to review hours in any other part of the premises. And so the hours that we've been asked to review are, says I, I'm sorry, is my legal advisor there? I'm trying to find it. Oh, here we go.
Yes, Chair, I'm here.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find the hours that we were being asked to adopt. So it's just the pub.
If you could refer to the hours stated on page 5 of the agenda pack, paragraph 2.3.
Got it. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. So yes, I'm bringing to your attention then. It's the supply of alcohol for consumption on and off the premises Monday to Thursday and Sunday 11 to 23:30, Friday and Saturday 11 to 00:30. Live music, recorded music, performance of dance and anything of a similar description indoors Monday to Thursday, Sunday 2300 to 23:30, Friday and Saturday 2300 to 00:30. Late night refreshment indoors and outdoors Monday to Thursday and Sunday 2300 to 23:30, Fridays and Saturdays 2300 to 00:30. Hours of premises are open to the public Monday to Thursday and Sunday 11 till midnight, Friday and Saturday 11 till 0100. Sorry, so the hours that there is, if you like, commonly known as a drinking up period between the closing of the bar and the members of the public required to leave the premises. And that is, I think, 30 minutes. Yeah. So that's what we were asked to consider, and that's a review. We were also given a
Sorry,
lot
Chair,
more...
that's the application for variation, not review.
Sorry, variation. Yeah, sorry, this word review and variation has come up so often. That is the application for variation. A number of issues that have been raised could be said to come up under review of an application, and we are not in a situation where we can actually review this application. And that's not been asked of us, and then we cannot make a case on it. So what we have said is that having listened to the submissions from the objectors, we've been unable to take any matters that would have come under the heading of a review, and therefore they're not appropriate. So we agree the hours that were asked of the applicant, and really I think that's it. You've got that this is an abbreviation of the of what we've agreed. The full agreement will be issued within 5 working days. I underline working days because that obviously spreads over the Christmas weekend period. So, our legal advisor has agreed to come into work immediately after Christmas to deal with these, being the trooper that she is.
That's very kind. I wasn't expecting to hear from you until January. Well,
no, she probably will be on leave in January to recover from being here over the period between. Any person that has been here at this hearing can make an objection to magistrates within 21 days. So I want to make sure that we understand it's 5 working days to get the hearing, and then it's 21 days to make an objection to a magistrate on any legal matters that you feel that we've not taken account of.
Chair, perhaps I could assist you here. So basically, you will receive the written confirmation of today's decision within 5 working days, and anyone aggrieved by today's decision has the right to appeal to the Magistrates' Court on a point of law within 21 days. So these are 2 separate time that applies to the 2.
Yeah.
Just for clarity.
Thank you. I'm familiar.
Right. So I therefore call this meeting to an end. So thank you very much for everybody's attendance, and hope you all have a happy Christmas, and maybe we'll see each other in the new year.
Thank you very much, councillors. I wish you all a happy Christmas and a happy new year also, and thank you very much for your time this evening.
You're welcome. Right.